Hey guys, one gal, ever seen here. Today I wanted to talk about and share my thoughts on what's going on with the hardcore situation in PoE 2. All the information here is obviously subject to change, but I think it's worth for us to have a chat about the overall outlook on hardcore right now. As a hardcore solo self-found player predominantly in PoE 1, I've got the general idea of how I would personally like hardcore to feel in PoE 2. Now, as you all might have watched, there was an interview with Jonathan Rogers himself, along with Zizarin, that cleared some of the air for questions about hardcore and PoE 2. Jonathan explicitly said that in early access, we will be able to start hardcore, and once we die, we can continue the game on softcore as if you started on softcore. With this new information, I've decided myself to start hardcore since there is really no downside. Another thing about bossing in PoE 2 is that you're not going to be portaling out of boss fights since the boss will reset. I'm totally in favor of this, and I think this makes the game much more challenging that you have to start and finish a boss all at once. In addition, you can't even change your gear in a boss fight, which I think is so refreshing.
This is something probably people will never notice, but you can no longer swap your gear in the middle of a boss fight either.
In PoE 1, it was common with some builds to have to swap support gems or pieces of gear in a fight for a specific phase. One example of this, though, is using the Rise of the Phoenix shield to raise your maximum fire resistance by 5% for the Searing Exile fight. Since this is technically a weapon swap and not switching of gear, the same strategy should be capable for some bosses in PoE 2, hopefully. You also have the separate weapon skill tree, which can further this interaction. The next thing to touch on is the infamous pause mechanic that is very controversial right now. It has many ups and downs, but as stated, Jonathan tells Zizarin that there is a respawn at checkpoint feature within the pause menu.
So you can always log out, like resurrect a checkpoint effectively, or like log out and just wait for time. So like it's possible to get out of a boss fight, right? Like you're not locked into that forever.
So just to confirm, this does not kill you on hardcore, right?
Wait, no, it doesn't. Oh, sorry, yeah, it doesn't.
Okay.
Now, to put this into context, in PoE 1, the logout macro was predominantly used by many players. I never actually bothered since I learned of packet loss death, and it just seemed like a nightmare to lose my character to that, and ultimately wasn't super interested and did the classic escape, exit to character selection. That in itself was quite a chore, and you most often died doing this action in PoE 1. There was considerable risk to actually do this action, whereas logout macro is just one button. In PoE 2, it looks like we will get an instantaneous pause and then be able to reassess our situation, or even better, leave the entire fight altogether with no risk if you are in the pause menu. This is absolutely ridiculous for the overall hardcore experience, and hopefully once people start playing, GGG will listen to suggestions the community has for it. This is arguably way stronger to avoid death than in PoE 1, and ultimately poses the question, why have hardcore at all if there is no challenge? If this is the case, everyone playing hardcore should have no excuse but to hit level 100. If you're in danger, simply pause and escape, rinse and repeat. With infinite pausing too, you can basically play the game in stop motion animation if you wanted to, which I hope is just not going to be the case. The only thing I can safely say is that as a community, we aren't going to stand for this pausing a million times in a fight bullshit.
And I'm going to abuse the fuck out of it as much as I can, as egregiously as I can on stream, to hopefully make it look awful. That's the goal. I want to fight a boss fight and pause 500 times and have nothing but flame in the chat and in the comments and everywhere just to start that fire, because I think it's going to suck. I think it's going to be really stupid. We'll see.
I think unless this gets changed, a lot of events like Gauntlet will never allow such abusive pausing. If people are going to be able to pause right before a big slam or be able to learn every mechanic through a pause, there's simply no reason to play hardcore in PoE 2. The silver lining in the interview that was touched on was that Jonathan mentions that whenever your client is unresponsive for what he thinks around 100 milliseconds, the game will automatically pause until your connection has stabilized.
And just another thing with that, by the way, is like I believe that the feature where if you lag, that the game gets paused, I believe that did get done, which means that even if you just have like internet lag, the actual server will pause while the lag is happening. So then, regardless of whether you get disconnected or not, you're not going to die during the middle of an internet lag spike. And I believe that it might be like 100 milliseconds or something like that. Is like basically if your client's not responding for that amount of time, then effectively the whole instance just pauses and we're like, we'll just wait until you're good before we keep going again. Yeah, so that's how that works basically. But yes, you can leave.
This is great news, and I'm really happy to see that I'm not going to lose all of my hard-earned progress to a disconnect. At least that's the hope anyway, but we'll see when the game is launched. Overall, it's going to be early access, so although it looks a bit strong, it will probably get worked around to stop people from exploiting it. Jonathan also states that they are aware there will probably be lots of exploits around the pausing feature, So that's refreshing to know that they know it's not a perfect system. The alternative that would be awful is if they doubled down and said, no, we're never going to change it. I have confidence in them that this will be sorted in early access. Another thing I'll say is that hardcore looks really different from PoE 1. Overall, I think the pace is going to be slowed down greatly. Encounters are going to be very threatening without the use of movement skills. It will basically feel like ruthless hardcore in PoE 1, which took me a lot of time to even clear the campaign. I think people will hate on this at first, but then come to realize that hardcore is supposed to slow your pace down. You shouldn't be instantly clearing the game, and it should be a way, like in PoE 1 HCSSF, to slow down the progression and make every upgrade feel more rewarding. And that's it for me, guys. I'm looking forward to PoE 2, and we've only got one more day until release. Are you guys going hardcore since there's no downside? I'm curious to see how many people will actually do it. Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.